Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the podcast. I'm so excited today to have author, speaker, coach extraordinaire Dallas Burnett. Dallas, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the pod today.
So glad to be here. Very, very excited for our conversation today, Johnny.
Man, I was looking through some of your history, and you have done a lot of things. You've written a couple books, you're speaking, you're running a company, and Think, Move, Thrive. You're the, what's your title? Chief Energy Officer, I think. Is that right?
I'll take it. Yeah.
I love it.
That's right.
I love it. And so I'm kind of curious, how would you describe the calling that God has placed on your life?
That's a great question. I think that's something that, like a lot of believers, I feel like I've wrestled with. And some people wake up when they're in sixth grade and they say, I'm going to go be a school teacher. And then they go be a school teacher, and they're just happy being a school teacher. And that has not been my path at all. In fact, mine's been very serendipitous and circuitous all at the same time. And I think that for me, the calling has gone back to no matter what I'm doing, I'm called to be a catalyst for positive change. So if I'm going to go and teach a class, or if I'm going to lead a business, or if I'm going to go, and it doesn't matter what I'm doing, if the Lord drops me into something, my responsibility is to make it better. And make it better before I leave, or make it better while I'm there. And that doesn't mean it might be personal relationships, it might be business, systems and processes. But regardless, it's just it's a calling for me just to be engaged in improvement. And so finding out what that meant and what that looks like in different stages of your life is more of an adventure. So I think my calling has been definitely towards adventure driven than something with ultimate clarity early on. So if you're out there and you're like, I have no idea what I want to do when I grow up, I mean, hey, join the club. Just it's not what you do when you grow up. It's it's how you do what you do and who you are as you go. So that's more of my calling message.
Well, one of the things I noticed about your story is that you've never been afraid to pivot, right? Well, whether that's writing a book or, launching an app or doing all the different things that you do. You've never been afraid to pivot. And I always love to ask, faith-driven leaders when they pivot like you do, how do you know that God's calling you into that area? How do you know it's the right yes?
Man, that is such a great question. And I would say on my best day, when I'm listening to the Holy Spirit and I'm tuned in and I'm right in the center of God's will, there's a restlessness in my spirit that I know that something is coming to an end, and I may not even be able to put my finger on what that is, but there's just this restlessness, and then there's an opportunity that presents itself. Typically, when I screw that up is when I get impatient and I'm ready for something else to happen, or even if I feel like the restlessness is there, but I'm just like, okay, let's go. And then you find out I had a friend, somebody was talking to, said they just keep on, they were a blindfolded mouse in a maze, and they figure out the way to the end of the maze by just running into the wall. So they just get bloody noses. And so I feel like part of pivoting is, when we move too quick, you just figure it out by getting a lot of bloody noses when you run through the maze. Right. So and that's the way. So for me, it's just a restlessness and an opportunity. There's been so many times where I was not planning or wanting to pivot, but a circumstance changed that made that necessary, and you just go, so this is the next thing. Though this is what I'm supposed to be doing. And sometimes it makes sense and sometimes it makes less sense, but hindsight's 20/20. But I feel like there's a restlessness usually and then an opportunity, or there's a restlessness and a lot of bloody noses finding the way.
One of the things that we say around here a lot is that if you're not dedicated to your disciplines, you'll be destroyed by your distractions.
I love it.
And I'm always curious when I talk to high-level leaders, or at least people who I think are high-level leaders, right? Like, what are some of the things that you do on a regular basis that keep you dialed in? That could be daily, weekly, monthly. Do you have any rhythms? Is there anything, really what I'm asking, is there anything that we can steal to be better?
So for me, I think that's a fantastic question on multiple levels. I have rhythms. I love how you use rhythms. We call it routines or rhythms. And for me, I am by nature a night owl. So my best work in college. Oh, man,
it's so rare to meet night owls in leadership. Almost everybody's like 5 a.m. or bust.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Like,
well, but that's the problem. See, you can't sleep till 10 o'clock, right? But if your best work comes between 12 and 2 and you got to be up at 5:30 or 6, then that's not a good recipe, right?
That's a tough hack.
Yeah, it's a tough hack. So what for me, it's all about a morning routine, and I have a very set process. It's got a lot of things mixed in it, and so it takes me actually about an hour and a half to go through my morning routine.
Take us through it. Let's get into it.
Yeah, so I'm up around 6 o'clock in the morning, and then I'm a long shower taker.
I love
for
that.
all those that jump in for the 5 minute, that's fine for y'all, but I'm in it for a long time because I'm also a 7 on the Enneagram, and I'm a creative. So I'm an organized creative. So I mean, I cannot tell you how many times when my brain is still turning on in the shower that there's so many things that get solved or ideas or whatever that happen for the day. So I just kind of let that happen in the morning, out of the shower, get ready, get the clothes on, and do quiet time and meditation and prayer for quite a bit. I have a stretching routine that I go to because I dislocated my hip back in my 20s, and so I got to stay limber. Breakfast is always 2 eggs. That's it. And black tea. And so if I make it through that routine, I have a couple also. I got in when I wrote the book Lift, we talk about routines in a business, or rituals actually, and the importance of rituals. And so I would encourage your listeners. I mean, we're coming up on Easter, and it's just such a great time. And I think depending on your denomination, some denominations are very ritualistic, others are not so much. And what I would say is that in business, sometimes leaders overlook the power of rituals.
Yeah.
And in our lives, sometimes we overlook the power of rituals. So I have a ritual after I get out of the shower that I go through that has me holding something, that has me saying certain things. There's verses and scriptures associated with it. And, some people call them mantras, or some people call them mottos. Some people call them just reading scripture. But I have a very specific ritual for a very specific purpose to get me centered for the day, help me focus on what the Lord has called me to do that day and who he's called me to be that day. And so all of that's kind of rolled up in my routines. And the goal is that at 8 a.m., I am through grumpy Dallas stage and through, completely night owl Dallas stage. Now I'm at least ready to function for the real world and take on leadership challenges. So so that's for me. So usually if I'm driving into an office or something like that, I'm out by 7:30. And if I'm working in the home office, I'm ready by 8. And but that's my morning routine. So I would say morning routines are huge. And then also I would say rituals are a big thing for me in terms of just personal rituals to keep me centered and keep me focused. Like you were saying, focus is so important, and distractions are so easy to have. I think another thing for me is a continuous sense of curiosity. I mean, I think that you should at least have at least one book. But if you got a podcast or a book that's keeping you moving into some zone of uncomfortable or the realm of, a growth edge or something like that, that just helps me push it, because a lot of people will get into a rut or be bored.
Yeah.
And what they need is just a little bit of challenge. So you need to have your thinking challenged, or, your schedule challenged, or how you're leading challenged. And I think we can do that through great books or good podcasts like this one.
When you think about creativity as a 7 on the Enneagram, I know that creativity for most 7s, now I'm an 8 on the Enneagram, 8 wing 7.
Nice.
Right?
I'm a 7 wing 8. So
that's why it's obviously a natural fit. So, and if you don't know about the Enneagram, first of all, it's in the book, Caveman Delegation, which you should pick up a copy of, and we'll get to that in just a second. But how do you focus your creativity to complete the arduous tasks of writing books? Because my head's like a fart in a skillet sometimes, right? It's just all over the place. What's your creative process? Because I love to learn from people who are like-minded.
Yeah, so that's a fantastic question. In fact, I used to be a songwriter, and one of the reasons that I kind of transitioned to content and books is that creativity piece. That creativity piece is just the same. I just like seeing things, and you have a particular point of view or worldview, and you can express it in unique ways. My problem is not the creative pieces, but that gives me energy. So writing a book is like, ooh, well, what do we want to talk about? Well, how do we want to say that? Well, how can we? Is there a model or something we can put together? That is like throwing gas on the fire for me. My Achilles heel. And this is why I don't really consider myself. This is how, if you're not a writer, there is hope for you. You can still write books, because I do not consider myself a writer at all. And yet we're on book 3. So I think that for me, it's the creative process. You got to find in that creative process, you got to find what gives you energy. So for me, it is the literal act of creating and coming up with something new and thinking things differently and trying to capture that in a way that can, be understood by somebody else. But I think as important as that is, you've got to lean on certain other, what I would say, characteristics or tools that will help you get to the finish line. Because the part for me that was the hardest, the Achilles heel, is the rewrite, is the editing. That is like just, cut my toe off with a spork before I want to do that. It's so bad, so bad. It's
also said
awful.
spork, which I love.
Yes, I know. You got to love the spork. And so, for me, it's that. So I've got to figure out a way to get around or over or through the lack of desire to do editing. And so for me, it's setting up environments that are natural for me to just enjoy, so that I can edit in an environment that's enjoyable at a time that I feel like I can focus and concentrate. When I did the first book, Move, most of that was edited long time after the kids went to bed, wife gets in bed, and then that's when I had time to focus. There was no noise. It was all quiet, and I can actually
like you said, right? You're a night owl, so that's just some of your peak time.
That's peak time for me. So that was when I would do it. So I would not pick a time where I'd be distracted or naturally be distracted. I'm catering to that, and then I'm setting some accountabilities in there. Like I'm going to do this by this time. So when I was working with the editor, she's sending me copies on the chapter, which, I always thought the first book, I was like, when I turn this in, this thing's awesome, man. This is the best I've ever. And then you get back the page and there's more red than black on it. I'm like, wait a minute, what is this?
I'm the worst writer ever.
Oh yeah. So then you're going through all that. So yeah. So for me, it was just having that accountability by having an editor that's saying, hey, I need this by next Friday. Yeah. That means I've got that deadline. So I can't procrastinate. So for me, it was just, and then knowing your purpose and like, this is what I want to do, because it's just awful. There's no other way to say it. It's just awful. And so at least for me, because I'm not a writer, it's awful, but I know I'm doing it for a greater purpose and for a greater reason. And so when I have that in the background, my drive is higher. I'm doing it in an environment that I love, and I have accountability holding me to it. So that's kind of, the secret is there is no secret on that one. It's a grind, and you got to figure out how to grind well.
I think that's important for all of us. How do we grind well? It's a good question. I want to talk a little bit about the latest writing that you have, Caveman Delegation. I love the title, first of all, and we're going to dive into all of that. But one of my favorite things to do with books is to read the dedication page. I think the dedication page is a look into someone's heart. And so I'm gonna read your dedication page. I'm sure you know what it says, but for the bold ones who are listening, and then I'm gonna ask you to just drill down on it a little bit. It says, dedicated to my first English teacher, my mom, and my first coach, my dad.
Yeah. So that's a for this one, number 3. So my first one was to my wife. My first book was to my wife. Second one was to my 3 daughters. And so I just felt like this was appropriate, especially in just the topic and everything, to be dedicated to my parents. So my mom is an English teacher. Sadly to say, I'm not a writer, and my mom is an English teacher. So I cannot tell you the number of times that she corrected my grammar growing up, especially in the South. Don't say ain't. What? So it was, bless her heart, is what I would say to her as well. For that, she had a handful of job. It was a big job to keep me straight. But yeah, she, part of my night owlism is from her, because she is a consummate night owl as well. And so bedtime was not necessarily a thing growing up, but I had someone that was going to hold me accountable to get the school project paper done. And there was a lot of nights that she would be sitting there with me at 2 a.m, hammering out a last minute draft of whatever, and proofing mine and editing my paper and making sure that it was right, making sure that I did it right. And so part of being an English teacher, I think is interesting, is that really, and I don't think people see this, and just going through with the girls, I have 3 daughters now, are very, very proficient at that, and much more than I was.
Yeah.
And seeing how English teachers are really, what they're doing is they're pushing us to be good at the details. They're teaching us to be craftsmen of our language. And we don't see it a lot of times that way, but that is an absolute craft. Language is a craft, and English teachers are just really coaches on holding you accountable to be excellent in how you communicate. And so that's what she did. She was really trying to hold me accountable and be excellent on how I communicate from a very young age. And that was really important to me. So in terms of delegating this book on delegation, I thought that was appropriate. My dad, I love coaching. Obviously, delegation has a lot with coaching and delegating authority and responsibility. And I love coaching in general. We talk a lot about performance. We have a coaching system. And so when you look back and you think about who's coaching you early on how to work well, how to what men do, and I have 3 younger brothers, so we talked a lot about how you grow up, how to be a man, how to do things well, how to be excellent, how to put your all and your effort into something. And then also just seeing him, and he's an entrepreneur. He started a company and a teacher. He started a company while he was teaching chemistry. And with his 2 brothers, and watching him do that well and lead that well is always inspiring for an entrepreneur to grow up in a home of entrepreneurship. So for me, he actually, when I was a freshman in high school, decided to coach a freshman boys basketball team. He was a college basketball player, and so there was no freshman team, and there was like a bunch of guys that were going to not be able to play because there was a massive amount of athletes coming through my year, and so we had all the teams stacked out. And so for us young freshmen, he just literally said, I want to coach these guys. And so he started the high school freshman team and coached it that year. And I appreciated that because I'm not necessarily the, Michael Jordan in basketball, but we had a lot of fun learning and doing and growing as a team. So I just appreciate both of them. They invested a lot in me and helped to kind of shape who I am. So I felt like it was almost like they were delegating responsibility of growing up to me. And so if I'm going to write a book on delegation, I should probably give them a lot of credit.
That's awesome. I love that. And just the willingness to step in. You can see, I think, was it Ted Lasso that says that I love meeting someone's parents because it's a recipe to how they grew up. You know what I mean? Like it's pretty incredible. One of the things I appreciate about the book is that you start with a story on your lawnmower, and from the outside looking in, everything looks perfect. And you ask everyone who's reading to wrestle with the question, are you cursed? I'm wondering if you can tell us a bit about that thought process.
Yeah, it's just such a thing because I feel like whenever you look at Facebook or Instagram or, TikTok or whatever, you're just seeing someone's highlight reel. It's their life's highlights. And so it's so easy to look from the outside, and see this kind of highlight reel of other people and think that we just lose gratitude because we start seeing everything that we don't have that they have, or everything that we think they have, or we think we project their life on as their highlight reel, and that's not their life. Real life is not a social media feed, right? And so what I tried to picture, kind of show in that picture on my lawnmower, which is another great think time. If you ever need something, some place to think, just listen to podcasts, just jump on a mower for about 2 or 3 or 4 hours. But, is that if you were looking at a social media feed at that time of my life, I've got 3 daughters and they're just doing great and they're thriving. Their little kids are cute as buttons and married, and we're kind of living in our spot that, is close to family. And we're just kind of, it looks like we've got it all. I'm leading a venture funded startup, and all these things are going, seemingly going great, and I'm miserable. I'm absolutely miserable because I have taken on so much that it's kind of like since we can, or since we could, we should, and it's the curse of either capability or stupidity. I'm not sure, but I just said yes too many times to too many things, and I think as leaders, that's easy to do because usually you're in a leadership position because you are capable. So when you're talking to your listeners, usually you get to that level, not because you're incompetent or inferior. You're very capable, but with capability, what I call the curse of capability, comes the responsibility to be able to say no. And sometimes we're defined more by what we say no to than what we say yes to. And I'd said yes to too many things. And you can say yes to too many great things. I was, serving at church and leading small groups and leading worship and leading companies and on the outside you go, wow, this guy has all. Absolutely not. I was headed for either a nervous breakdown or a health crisis or something because I was not in a good space. But you look at my social media reel, which funny enough, I don't really post on social media, so you wouldn't see that. But if you could, you might misinterpret that and say this guy has it all together. So for me, I'd said yes to too many things, and that was the curse of capability. And so maybe some of your listeners are struggling with that too. I do a lot of talking on burnout, and a lot of that comes from saying yes to too many things and not having a good sense of how to recover. And that's one thing I struggle with as a 7 and as someone who has also experienced workaholism, is that you can get burnout. Not being stressed. The stress doesn't scare leaders a lot of times. They're fine with that. They can handle more stress. They can handle those environments. They can handle greater workload. They can handle greater hours. It's the lack of recovery. Max out on my bench press and I work out. Okay, that's fine.
Yeah.
But I can't turn around and do that again 5 minutes later, and then 5 minutes later, and 5 minutes later, and never stop, because I've got to let my muscles recover. And the curse of capability says, hey, you can only say yes to so many things. And if you say yes to too many things, you're going to get burnt out. And that's where I was. So I was on my mower and had this realization that I had done a poor job of saying no.
So let's talk about recovery, because I think that that's important. And I want to get into delegation systems in just a second. But, I'm going to use you in my life, right? So I am a associate pastor. I'm bivocational. The podcast family knows this. Bivocational, executive coach, pastor, and then I'm also the president of the Athletic Boosters, and I help the football program because those are part of the communities, right? And so they're all really good yeses in my life.
Yes.
And I also coach 14U baseball because
nice.
Because I my 14-year-old, right?
Of course.
What does this week? It's Holy Week as we record this. Busy week in the life of the church. It's
Absolutely.
spring sports. Busy week. How do we what's good recovery look like for a guy like me?
I would say that's a great. Thanks for asking the question. First of all, I would say good recovery for you should start. Again, the secret is there is no secrets here. So I think good recovery starts with good sleep habits. If you're having poor night habits, if you're watching TV late at night to unwind, one of my bad habits is, and this is what I'm working on this year, is actually my night routine. The better my night routine is, the better my morning routine can be, because the more I'm prepared for it. And so, making sure you don't get a lot of blue light before you go to bed, making sure you're getting about 7.5 hours of sleep, which is tough sometimes because you got a lot of responsibilities. And so you may have some calls late at night, but being able to set some boundaries on that, at least for a period of time. I'm not one to say balance, where it's like everything has to be in perfect balance. I'm more of like, you do what you need to do when you need to do it, because sometimes there's a donkey in the ditch and you don't need to go and just say, I'm only working on that 2 hours and I'm coming back. You get the donkey out of the ditch. On the flip side, there are seasons in our life that are more busy and seasons in our life are more restful. But if you only have one season, then it's a problem. So that's one thing. I think really evaluating for you is making sure that you're reminding yourself of why you're doing what you're doing. Yeah. If you find anything that doesn't fit that purpose statement, that you understand there's a strong drive to that, we can do hard things, especially when we know the why behind them. And so that purpose is going to help sustain that energy. But I think too, you also need to know, even if you have a great coaching 14U baseball, I mean, that's the love of the game. That in and of itself might be restoring to you.
It is. I love it
for me,
so much.
For me, it was,
yeah.
I mean, like I was a girls soccer. And so for years we coached girls soccer. And for me, it wasn't necessarily, even though that was a task on my list, I actually got energy from that. So I was given energy. I'd have a long day at work, and to go and run around the soccer field and act crazy with a bunch of, elementary school girls was actually something that gave me energy. When I messed up, when I would get kind of head over the skis, is when I would just stack too many things in and I had no margin in my life. Yeah, and therefore I had no time to recharge. So for me, recharging, and you're going to have to figure out, you would have to figure out what this is for you, but reflection time is really important. Gratitude is very important. Doing compassionate things for other people is also something that actually can help burnout. And just feeling like you have clarity and alignment at your work and with your job. The funny thing is that most people, there's a myth that, if I'm burnt out, I go on vacation for a week and it'll all be better. No, that's absolutely wrong. You might feel okay on your vacation. That's good recovery in and of itself. But you're coming back to the same system that you left that had you burn out. You're going to pick back up, and within a day or two, you're going to be right back to where you were. So it's really about looking at the system that you're in and either tweaking the system, where I need to say no to more things, or adding other process steps into that, like little micro, you talked about rhythms, micro rhythms, like even it could be something as simple as saying, having a gratitude, having some type of gratitude statement that you're going to do at certain times of the day. If a trigger happens, if your phone rings, you say, I'm thankful for, 3 things or whatever, because just anything like that, having gratitude restores us from burnout, paying it forward and having compassion for someone else also does the same thing. So there's all kind of like micro rhythms.
Sure.
Rest is huge. Exercise, big deal. And then really understanding some people like going outside and hunting. Other people like going outside and playing golf. Other people just like going out and laying in a chair and reading a book. So I think for you, it's during this time where we're kind of in Holy Week and we're looking at our schedules and thinking through and having a little bit of more time to reflect. I think if I were you, I'd say, what are things that give me life? Mm-hmm. And we're all pouring out. We're pouring out. We're vessels that are pouring out. But we also have to, how does the Lord fill us back up? And making sure that I'm also, as I'm pouring out, getting filled back up, maintaining my physical health, mental health, spiritual health. And some of that's going to be personal, but those are just a few things that I would say.
That's so good.
You go into.
Dude, that was like a machine gun of good nuggets there. I love that. Let's talk about the book, Caveman Delegation. One of the things that you really lobby for in the book is a delegation system, right? And so I love the way you kind of lay it out. If you haven't had a chance to look at the book, I recommend you pick it up because it really is a step-by-step process full of things that are both personal and corporate opportunities. So you go through the Enneagram type, how to motivate based off the Enneagram. Like it really is a really simple but not easy process to go through to set up delegation. Talk to the bold ones who are listening on why a delegation system is just better is a more appropriate thought process than being just a delegator.
I'm so glad you said it that way. You captured that thought very, very good. And it's exactly the way I would say it. So I think that when we look at delegation, there's a couple things. As a leader, first of all, I'm wanting to create a very strong culture. I'm really wanting my team to buy into what we're doing, have tremendous alignment, and share these values, and then have a vision that we're moving to. As a leader, that's what I'm focused on doing. I'm trying to create that because success is that byproduct. If I can create this culture, success is what comes from a strong, vibrant, healthy culture. And one of the things that healthy cultures have, when you look across the spectrum, and a strong, tight-knit culture is they have a very, very unique and specific language. Like when you talk to people from certain organizations, they just sound different. Yeah. They say things that other people don't say, and they understand what each other's talking. And you're like, wow, they totally get it. And they just said 3 words, and that they know. It's like you're reading someone's mind. It's like the guy on the win, lose, or draw that draws this thing on a paper, and he goes, and it's like a line. It's like a scroll, or a what? And it's like, wait, how did you even get that? They just understand each other, right? That is a sign of a strong culture. So one of the things that I wanted to create with Caveman was something that would be unique to where companies and organizations could include this into their language very easily, that people could, it was sticky. Because when I was riding on the lawnmower, I was actually listening to a podcast on delegation, and I said, man, oh my gosh, I need to delegate. I need to say no. I need to pass these things off. And I'll never remember what this guy's talking about. I'll never do it. It's a great idea. I'll never remember it. So one of the reasons that I wanted to develop the system is so for my own self. I mean, a lot of my books comes just from my own. I need this, so I might as well write a book about it. So I needed that. I was leading a larger organization at the time, and they needed that. And so we built this for them. I built this originally. This system, I just came out with a book with this system. We've been using this for 5 years in at a company that has been putting this into practice for a long time, and they have incorporated it into their language. And so that's one thing. Another thing is, I just needed a process because I talk about this in the book. I refer to it as delegation bombs, right? Sometimes we will run past as a leader. We will not take the time to think through important things because we dismiss them as being insignificant. Sometimes we think, well, I'm just going to delegate something and I'm just going to hand this off because I need to hand this off. And that's great. You might need to hand it off. And maybe we just say, okay, can you take this task and you run with it? Well, if you're unloading tasks as a leader with that kind of flippancy, then what I call that is a delegation bomb. You're just bombing people. Boom, 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 boom. Because maybe that's going to work out, and sometimes it does. Maybe you just hit the nail on the head. But if you're not intentional about how you do anything, if you lack intention, the likelihood of success is dramatically lower. You're just rolling the dice, right? Sometimes you're going to win. A lot of times you're not. And so what I want to do is say, hey, what I wanted to do with Caveman is say, can we systematically delegate in a way that increases the likelihood of success? And can we do it in a way that's meaningful to people so I could train this, so I can have if I'm a leader, can I have those that I lead understand the process so then they become fishers of men as well? They can go and do it too. And so, I want to have a system because I can train on a system. And I can incorporate that in the culture. So that's really where we went to with Caveman. And the Caveman, we talk about in the book, the Caveman delegation kind of formula is very simple. It's me do, you watch, you do, me watch, and then you do up to. Now that's very simple, and it does sound like a caveman. But you'll always be able to remember that. But on the flip side, in the book, we kind of take a very interesting route to get to that, because it's not just about that. You can give someone and, showing someone how to do something and to do it. It's really, part of it is understanding, who am I going to delegate to? What do I even need to delegate? Like we were wrestling with these questions as the leaders at this organization. It's like, what is it? How do I even know what's a good thing to delegate, and what do I need to keep? Like, how do I even know this? And so is there ways we can do that and then find out who it is in the organization that we need to be delegating certain tasks to, and then really getting to know, like, if I'm going to delegate this task to someone else, we end the book after we go through Caveman with that, like you were saying earlier, the Enneagram, where we can say, can we even supercharge this even more, understanding the person and understanding what would motivate them, what we need to look out for, their natural propensity as it relates to delegating. And so just gives a lot of tools. That's really what I wanted this book to be, was just a lot of resources for leaders on that.
As I was looking at the book, and I do this thing called a podcast read, so it's not like an in-depth read, but it's a read enough so that we can get a feel so that I can get a feel and jump around the book. And I'm really excited to go back through and do an actual read of it. One of the questions I had as I was reading this was, how is AI changing delegation in your opinion?
Man, it's so fascinating that you would answer that, because I'm trying to stay ahead of the curve. Some people are terrified of AI. And,
I love it. I'm actually
so
looking
nice.
at some AI systems as like an executive assistant. And so and I'm looking at a whole bunch of them. So I'm curious if you've done it already, if you're using an AI executive assistant.
Yes.
What are your thoughts? I mean, we could nerd out on this for a little bit. I'll keep the leash short, but what do you think?
Well, no, I think you're exactly right. In fact, in the book, I actually say don't include only humans as things that you can delegate to. So I think that we have some unique opportunities in the time that we live. It's very interesting, and the speed of the development of AI, if you look at where it was just a few years ago, I was in the first 1 million people that downloaded ChatGPT the first week it was out. I just happened to log on. Somebody hit a post, and I was like, what is this? Checked it out, and it's like, man, this is amazing. And that was, when you think about what it was just a year and a half ago or 2 years ago, whenever it was, it's unbelievable how the speed. So yeah, I think AI is I'm actually into right now taking a course, which I'll share with you after the show. There's actually a couple that are out right now on AI agents where you can design. Oh yeah,
I know I just talked to somebody from Instacart about this, and it was fascinating. Okay, listen, I want you to come back on and let's talk about this again.
Sure, 100%. In fact, I'm about to start building a few, so it'll be a fun experiment to see what we create.
Good. Okay, listen, I want to honor your time today. Sure. I know that the podcast family is going to want to connect with you all over the interwebs. Yes. I have one more question to ask you, but before I do, where can they find all things Dallas? Because I will admit, social media wise, you're not like out there a ton.
No, that's not my goal. And I might be out there more coming up, but we're kind of organizing things before we.
You do have a Rockstar podcast though.
Yeah. Yeah. And we do have a podcast. If you want to connect with me on LinkedIn. There's not a lot of Dallas Burnett's on LinkedIn, so you can definitely hit me up on LinkedIn. I'll share with you the link on that. You can find all of my books on Amazon, and then we're about to launch a new performance management company. It's a platform and a system. So it kind of takes the coaching that we're doing right now. We have a coaching system and an app kind of to the next level, and it pulls in annual reviews and competency frameworks and goal setting all into one kind of platform. That's going to be on a website called Perforum, and I'll share that with you as well. But to your listeners, I'll give them a couple links that you can share with just your listeners, because we're about to take the Enneagram. We actually created our own Enneagram assessment. So we have a whole thing. And the cool thing is, for your listeners, this Enneagram is different. What makes it different than most, there's one in the UK that has a similar one, is that it takes it from a business perspective, leading teams. So it gives you your personal Enneagram, but then it talks about your Enneagram as it relates to business and leadership and leading teams.
Good.
And so we wanted to put that in ours. That is going to be free for your listeners, which is important because we've had it open for a little while and we're about to take it and put it back behind the paywall. And so I'll send you the free link so your listeners can take the Enneagram if they want to find out more about it for free.
It'll be in the show notes for sure.
Yeah,
I love that. Thank you.
Yeah, so they can connect me with on Think, Move, Thrive or my LinkedIn profile. That's the best places to get a hold of me. I am on X, but I would say LinkedIn's best place.
Okay, last question I love to ask people. It's an advice question. I'm going to ask you to go back in time and give yourself one piece of advice, except I get to name the season of life that you're in.
Ooh, okay. All right.
I want to take you back to your wedding day. I know that you've been married for over 20 years.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And you, like me, it seems that you may have outkicked your coverage, as they say.
Absolutely. Without doubt.
If you could go back in time and sit knee to knee with that younger version of yourself on the morning of your wedding day, look him in the eyes and give him one piece of advice about the journey he's going to go on, what would you tell him?
Oh, man, that is a fantastic question. I think, that's a really great, you threw a wrench in it when you said you get to call the time period. That's interesting. Here's what I would say, though. I think that I grew up in a house it was very full of testosterone. There's 4 boys. I live in a house with 3 daughters. So there's 4 girls. So I've seen both sides in its absolute and its absolute, epitome. And so, what I would say is I'm knowing now what I've seen, it's like I had no idea. And so when I was walking into wedding day, I just had no idea. It's so hilarious. And so I look at that, I almost laugh now. But what I would say is, number one, I would give myself that you need to spend a lot more time trying to understand the other person than you probably do. And I think seeking first to understand help me see this from your point of view, from your side, versus trying to, if we get into it, the inner 8 comes out, and that's never great on conflict in terms of marriage, unless you have an 8 as a wife, then you might need it. But I just would spend time. It's not important to spend time winning as much as winning an argument as much as understanding.
Yeah.
And so I think that's one thing I would say. And another thing I would say is that you need to spend time, working on yourself before you think you need to work on someone else. And I think that, for me, I brought a lot of things in to our marriage and relationship I had no idea about. I'm in my 40s and still going, wow, I had no idea that was, that is true. Wow, I cannot believe that. My self-talk is horrible in this area or this thing. What am I thinking? What is going on in my head? I actually coach people in this and I still have terrible stuff. How is this possible? And so, when you're sitting in, you're 20, I was 24, I guess when we got married, and, there was this the world's in front of you, but there's just a lot of things that I brought into that I had no idea. And so I needed to spend more time getting to know myself and how to make me healthy. And that's better than helping try to fix other things in our marriage. And so I would say other than that, I have a picture on the wall at our 10-year anniversary she gave me, and it's us at our wedding day. We're both I don't even know, I can't remember why, but we both are full wedding gear, and we're leaning back and just laughing. And she said, a little caption under it says 10 years and still laughing. And I think that, that's just a reminder to me to, you go through seasons in your marriage and your life, and you go through ups and downs. And I think that at the end of the day, it's just really, really, really important to be able to find time to laugh and share experiences together, and still remember that you're best buds. And that's why you got married in the first place. And sometimes you lose sight of that as you go through some difficult times and challenging times. So I would say those are the 3 things I would tell my crazy 24-year-old self.
Amen. I love it. Dallas, thank you so much for taking the time today and to be so generous. I can't wait to have you back on and continue to lean into this, what God's doing in your ministry.
Thanks, Tony. It was great to be on the show with you today, man. This was awesome.